I have here two broken iMacs. The larger one I bought for only $20 from Facebook Marketplace. The other belongs to my father and is the iMac I started this YouTube channel on. Both have their share of grime and issues, but let's see if we can get them up and running again. The smaller of the two has always had issues, almost since it was brand new. It always struggles to power on, sometimes taking a few minutes after pressing the power button before the fans will start and it will post. Recently, it started sparking when plugged in and now won't turn on at all. No fans, no chime, nothing. Even when plugging it in while holding the power button, it didn't kick into life. The larger one I don't know anything about, other than it apparently also doesn't work. Let's fire it up and see what happens. Okay, so we have a cursed iMac that chimes indefinitely. Let's open it up. The front glass on these old iMacs is only held in with magnets, not glue, so a couple of suction cups and it comes right off. We have 3 missing screws right off the bat. That doesn't bode well for the integrity of this iMac. I'll remove the remaining 5 screws before lifting up the display to detach the several cables attaching it to the logic board. There's a main display cable, temperature sensor, backlight power, and sync cables. Once disconnected, we can move it out of the way. The previous owner has removed the hard drive, which is sensible, but they've also stolen the hard drive bracket. Like, come on mate, how am I going to mount the hard drive if I get this thing working? I'll get the other one open in much the same way. You have to be careful when removing screws as they can get stuck to the magnets that hold the glass in place. One wrong move and it's goodbye nice screen, hello big scratch. Despite both being mid-2010 models, there are quite a few variations between the two. A lot of the parts are not interchangeable, like the power supply or fans, because the larger iMac needs a larger power supply that outputs more wattage and has room for larger cooling fans. Both power supplies have this white residue on them, which at a first glance looks like someone spilt something on them, but given they both have it, it must be some kind of factory coating. The fans could use a clean, and there's even remains of a millipede in one. A textbook cause for a completely dead computer is a dead power supply, so that's where I'll start. A really strange design choice with almost every iMac model is Apple leaving the backside of the power supply completely exposed. If plugged in or residual charge remains in the capacitor, you could get a full 240 volt shock. There is 4 screws holding this power supply in place, yet there is 3 different types of screws. I purchased this replacement online as a used part. The replacement can be fitted. Before completing the upgrade I have planned for this iMac, we should test it to see if the new power supply has fixed the issue. I'll get the screen's cables reattached before installing just 2 screws to hold it in place enough to test. Pressing the power button, we have a working iMac. Well, that was an easy fix. I believe this year of iMac is the only Apple computer to ever ship with an Intel Core i3. Hard drives are abysmally slow, so I'll swap it out for an SSD while we have the device open. I've ordered an SSD to full-size hard drive adapter, as well as the drive to go with it. Keeping on theme of our Intel iMac, we have a 240GB Intel SSD. I wouldn't buy a used hard drive, but SSD, I don't see why not. They're pretty robust and this computer is used infrequently, so it should suit well. Attaching it to the iMac through USB, I can clone the original hard drive's contents to it. Apple's built-in disk utility software was incapable of this task. It isn't possible to clone the drive while it's booted, and in recovery mode it still wouldn't work as the new drive is smaller than the old one, regardless of the fact that only 70GB of data is on the old drive. So I had to use an alternative app to do such a task. But with everything transferred to the new drive, it can be installed. Removing the old drive, you can see it has 3 cables rather than the usual 2. The third being a temperature sensor cable, of which will only fit Seagate hard drives. It won't attach to a Western Digital or any SSD. So we'll have to fool the iMac to get this to work. A hard drive adapter is a simple product that has only one job, something almost impossible to stuff up, yet they've managed to. The original mounting hardware won't screw into the new adapter. These aren't special Apple screws, they're just standard hard drive spec fasteners. So I'll have to drill them out bigger to get them to fit. We want a drill bit that's just smaller than the thread of the screw. If it's larger, the screw will just fall through. 3mm was the best fit. Enlarging the hole, I can use the screw as a tap and rethread the steel. Repeating this for the remaining 3 holes, the hard drive brackets can be installed before the whole assembly is put back into the iMac. If I was to leave the temperature sensor cable unplugged, the iMac would ramp the center fan to full speed, creating a lot of unnecessary noise. There are some fancy adapters you can spend a fortune on to fix this issue, but I read about some alternative options. One supposed trick is to swap the optical drive and hard drive sensor cables, but that doesn't work as the cables are not interchangeable. So someone on a forum long ago suggested to just bridge the sensor wires together. So that's what I did. Using a section of component lead and bending it into shape, it could be pressed into the plug, wrapped in electrical tape to prevent it shorting against anything before it can be tucked away behind the drive's power cable. With that job done, we can give the fans a quick clean before we get this iMac back in one piece. I can use air to remove any dust that has accumulated on the display and glass while it's been exposed. You're best to avoid using a cloth if possible to prevent adding any smudges to the screen. With that, the glass can be reinstalled. This iMac is now working again, with a small upgrade to go with it. My father will be pleased. And before anyone asks why I didn't just give him a new computer, well, he really didn't want one. But he's happy to still use this one until websites stop working on it. Despite the sensor cable hack, the OS reads the temperature as being between 26 and 27 degrees. As for the other iMac we opened earlier, I suspect its graphics card is faulty. Usually when an iMac is acting crazy, such as this one, or it won't boot past a white screen, has lines, or screen artifacts, it's usually a bad GPU. And being a Mac in the range of 2007 to 2011, it's almost a guarantee at this point. I could purchase a replacement used card, but it's likely I'd find myself in the same situation. The graphics cards used in these iMacs are known as MXM cards. Non-Apple versions can be found in some gaming laptops of a similar era. However, they lack Apple's EFI firmware, so you wouldn't see anything on the screen until reaching the desktop. But I do want to see if I can get it working without having to purchase a new graphics card, as this is a common issue you might find yourself. At about 320 degrees, I cooked the GPU chip for 2 minutes, in the hopes to have melted and reconnected any bad solder joints. The card is hot to touch, but once it's cooled down, I'll attach it into the iMac without its heatsink to see if we've made any difference at all. It chimed only once. I think we have a winner. Of course, we don't know until the screen is attached, but I better get that heatsink reinstalled before letting it boot up fully. I'll clean off the GPU die before some new thermal paste is applied and the heatsink reattached. With that, the GPU assembly can be reinstalled with its accompanying screws and temperature sensor cable. Confident, I'll also tack in a hard drive so the computer has something to boot to. This time pressing the power button, it's alive and booting. There's no guarantee the issue won't return someday, but it might prolong it for some time. But now that it's running, we can see its hardware specifications. It's got a 2.8 GHz Core i5 and 20 GB of RAM. And that graphics card we got working? A Radeon HD 5750. I'll need to put a proper drive into this iMac. As I don't know its reliability, for now I'll just install the old drive from the other iMac. But of course, it too has a different temperature sensor, which must fit a different brand of hard drive, so I'll have to bypass it also. I had a look through my miscellaneous parts boxes to try and find a hard drive bracket without any success. However, what I did find was a full bag of iMac screws, which will replace all the missing screws we noticed earlier. I did have a spare set of screws for mounting the drive, but just not the top bracket. As I'm hoping to use this iMac for a project down the line, I'll just temporarily attach the drive using zip ties. Because if it can't be fixed with zip ties, duct tape, or isopropyl alcohol, it's unfixable, right? To stop the zip ties from sliding off, I'll install the factory mounting screws to keep them in place. Would you look at that? It's even got a built-in shock absorber. Once that screen is in, the drive isn't going anywhere. The fans on this iMac were particularly dirty. Removing them to clean would be the preferred option. However, doing so requires removing the motherboard, which is a lot of work for not a whole lot of gain. Using a brush and some air, I was able to clean out the fans exceptionally. Once the rest of the internals have been given a dust out, the display and cover glass can be reattached to this iMac. After completing the clean of the outer portion of glass, I noticed this white discoloration. Lifting the glass back off, I could see that it was on the internal side. It's clear someone didn't keep this side clean while working on this iMac previously. Testing the iMac, we can see it's still working perfectly. For some peace of mind, I'll increase the fan speed of the graphics card, which in itself is pretty far away from the heatsink, sitting below the DVD drive. Now it's time both of these iMacs got a much needed clean on the outside. Some of this grime is pretty gross. And we're done. So this is it. Two 2010 iMacs brought back from the dead. With some software, we could upgrade these to the latest versions of macOS, albeit they'd run a bit slow. These will run Windows 10, so that's always an option for up-to-date software support, which should keep them running for years to come. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing and check out the computer playlist for more videos just like this one. And if you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.